Have you ever observed that when you genuinely begin to transform, the people around you start to feel uneasy? They won't express it directly, of course. They'll mask it with humor, with advice disguised as concern, or with that awkward silence when you broach deeper subjects. But at its core, what's truly happening is simple. Your mental evolution threatens their comfort zone, and nobody enjoys being compelled to confront their own complacency. Perhaps you're experiencing precisely this right now. You've started to think differently, act differently, maybe even question things you once accepted without a second thought, and suddenly, you've begun to feel isolated, misunderstood, judged. What nobody told you, and what nature understood better than anyone else, is that this is the cost of forging a resilient mind, not just any kind of strength, but a strength so profound, so authentic, that it makes others uncomfortable. It unnerves them. It exposes, without uttering a word, the frailty of those who still navigate life on autopilot. But why does this occur? Because a truly potent mind poses a threat to collective mediocrity. And nature was explicit about this. When you decide to think independently, establish your own values, and discard the comforting illusion of prepackaged truths, you become dangerous. Dangerous to the system, dangerous to others, and most importantly, dangerous to your former self. This video is a call, a challenge. It's not intended for those who are content, nor for those who seek facile answers. It's for you who is weary of being held captive by your own insecurities, who feels on the verge of an internal upheaval, and who is ready to construct something indestructible, a mind impervious to manipulation, a mind that intimidates because it does not yield. So, if you feel prepared for this path, a solitary, arduous, yet absolutely transformative path, stay, because what nature has to impart will confront you, but can also liberate you. And after this, you will never perceive things the same way again. Friedrich Nietzsche was not merely a philosopher. He was a surgeon of the human soul, someone who possessed the courage to peer into the abyss of existence and not only face it but plunge into it. And it is precisely in that abyss, in that inner chaos that many avoid, that he discovered the source of true strength. Because, according to nature, it is not in peace, stability, or order that a human being transforms. It is in pain, it is in the fall, it is in chaos. He wrote, "You need to have chaos inside you to give birth to a dancing star." This is not a poetic metaphor. It is a psychological diagnosis. It signifies that if you aspire to build an unshakable mind, you must abandon the infantile notion that it will occur through comfort, superficial motivation, or positive affirmations. No genuine strength is born until you confront suffering without fleeing, when you cease asking for life to be easier and begin wishing to be stronger. Reflect on the times you experienced the most growth. Was it when everything was seamless? Or was it when you were shattered, lost your direction, having to reconstruct yourself with your own hands? Nietzsche believed that suffering was not an error of existence, but rather its primary driving force. He did not romanticize pain. He confronted it as a tool. And if you can transform your relationship with pain, with failure, with loneliness, you begin to forge something rare, an indomitable spirit. It is precisely there that the world begins to be disturbed by you, because while most flee from chaos, you will learn to navigate within it. While others plead for normalcy, you will create greatness. But this transformation demands a brutal break with everything you were taught about strength. Being strong is not about constant smiling. It is not about feigned emotional control. Being strong is enduring the unbearable and emerging on the other side even more formidable. But nature understood that chaos alone is insufficient. You can be destroyed by it if you lack an inner center, an anchor. And that is why, in the subsequent part, we will discuss the most pivotal moment of Nietzschean philosophy, when he killed God and placed upon you the full weight of existential responsibility. Because when there is no longer a sky to look up to, it is within you that the universe needs to be born. If this content resonates with you, click the subscribe button and join the channel. Thank you for your support. When Nietzsche declared, God is dead, he was not celebrating. He was issuing a warning that many still fail to grasp today. What he eradicated was not a divine entity itself. He eradicated the illusion that a higher authority is overseeing everything, the illusion that there is a plan, a pre-established meaning, a purpose bestowed by an external source. The death of God signifies the end of all excuses, and that is terrifying because until then, it was convenient to outsource the responsibility for your life. It was comforting to believe that everything happens for a reason, that suffering is part of a divine plan, that a greater good will ultimately justify everything. Nature violently rips away this veil. It stares you in the face and says, "You are alone. There is no ready-made meaning. Now you are the creator." And this is where the true construction of a powerful mind commences, because most people collapse when they realize they are alone in the face of chaos, without a manual, without guarantees, with no one to blame. But those who possess the courage to confront this without crumbling begin to forge an unshakable consciousness. With the death of God, nature thrusts you into the abyss of radical freedom. You should not follow commandments. You must create values. You should not obey. You must surpass yourself. It is the birth of brutal autonomy, and with it comes the weight of everything now depending on you. There is no more absolution. There is no more salvation either. You either build yourself or you sink. But here is the secret. This freedom that frightens you is also the greatest source of power you can possess. When you understand that no one will come to save you, something within you ignites, a fire that compels you to rise even while bleeding, that forces you to think for yourself, to feel for yourself, to act not because someone dictated it is right, but because you decided it is. It is in this rupture with existential crutches that nature prepares the ground for something even more grandiose, the emergence of a new way of being, a type of human being who does not live according to the rules of the herd, who does not need approval or permission, a being who creates their own morality, who surpasses their own limits and lives as a creator. A being that frightens the weak because it forces them to see themselves as they truly are. This being has a name. Nietzsche called it the Übermensch, the Overman, and it is about him that we will now speak, because if you aspire to build a mind so resilient that no one can break it, you need to understand how to become this figure who lives above conventions, guided solely by their own will to power. Let's delve into this. Nature did not believe in the slow and passive evolution of humanity. It believed in rupture, in radical transformation, in creative destruction. And that is why it conceived the idea of the Übermensch, the Overman. It is not about a superhero. It is not someone with mystical powers. The Übermensch is a being who has overcome everything that binds the ordinary man: guilt, obedience, herd morality, the need for acceptance. The Übermensch does not seek to be accepted. He does not ask for permission to exist. He creates his own internal laws and lives by them, even if that puts him against the entire world. And that is precisely why his mind becomes unbreakable, because it is not built on the expectations of others. It does not need external approval to validate itself. It is self-sufficient. It feeds on its own will to power, the deep impulse to shape reality in its own image. This is the central point. The Übermensch does not adapt to the world. He imposes meaning on the world. He does not seek comfort. He seeks greatness. He does not ask, "Is this allowed?" He asks, "Is this worthy of me?" And this shift in perspective changes everything, because when you begin to perceive yourself as a creator, not as a servant, the way you think, act, and feel transforms completely. However, here lies the challenge. Becoming this kind of being demands sacrifice. You will have to eliminate parts of yourself that still crave approval. You will have to confront the pain of not fitting in. You will have to bear the burden of constructing your identity from the ground up, without guarantees, without pats on the back, without applause from the audience. And most people cannot endure it. They give up before they even start. They retreat to the safety of pre-established beliefs, dogmas, and rules that someone else formulated for them. The path to the Übermensch is solitary, and nature understood this. Nietzsche himself lived on the fringes, misunderstood, labeled mad, isolated from the world he sought to liberate. But it was in that isolation that he discovered his freedom. And this is what you need to grasp. The stronger your mind becomes, the further you diverge from the masses. The higher you ascend, the more you disrupt. The construction of the Übermensch is the most brutal and transformative process anyone can face, because it requires you to destroy everything that is not inherently yours, everything imposed upon you by a flawed culture, by a society that rewards obedience and punishes authenticity. Only after this destruction do you begin to build. But this construction does not occur amidst the crowd. It happens in silence, in withdrawal, in the profound solitude that distinguishes the strong from the weak. And that is precisely why, in the next part, we will delve into the most neglected and most potent aspect of this journey, the solitude of the strong. Because the truth is, to become unshakable, you will have to learn to walk alone, and few are prepared for that. Are you? If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It breaks down Jung's core ideas and provides tools for deeper self-understanding. The link is in the pinned comment. If there's one thing no one tells you about the path of mental strength, it's this: the stronger you become, the more alone you feel. And it's not because you intentionally isolate yourself. It's because the world begins to not know how to interact with you. Nature spoke clearly about this. The free spirit, the one who breaks away from conventional morality, who does not accept simplistic truths, who thinks independently, inevitably distances themselves from the herd. And that distancing is painful, but that pain is necessary because genuine growth requires space, and you cannot grow while being tethered to the expectations of others. Most people exist within an invisible herd, where every thought is policed, every action judged by others' reactions. You become accustomed to moving in a group, thinking like the group, feeling secure because of the presence of others. But what nature proposes is the opposite. It tears you away from that comfort and casts you into the desert. In that desert, there is no applause, no praise, no guide. There is only you, your doubts, your traumas, your fears, your desire to give up. And that's where the real test begins. Because what will most people do? They will retreat. They will hide again behind their masks. They will pretend they don't feel, don't think, don't see. But you, if you truly aspire to become someone unbreakable, will have to stay. You will have to endure the silence that reveals your true self. Nietzsche said, "The individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe." If you try, you will often feel lonely and sometimes scared. But no price is too high to pay for possessing yourself. That is the essence. The possession of oneself, the rarest and most powerful achievement anyone can attain. Because when you truly possess yourself, no one else can control you. No one else dictates your worth, and no one else can bring you down. But this possession comes with the weight of loneliness. You will lose people. You will be misunderstood. You will hear that you are arrogant, strange, distant. They will try to pull you back into the mold. They will call you crazy, cold, insensitive. But that is the price of not being domesticated. It is the price of not needing applause. It is the price of not living as a mirror of others' needs. And here is the raw truth. If you cannot stand loneliness, you are not ready for freedom, because all real freedom comes with abandonment. Abandonment of emotional crutches, of comfortable illusions, of utilitarian friendships. That's why nature saw solitude as a privilege, a battlefield where the true self finally has space to emerge. But this free mind, this elevated spirit, does not merely walk alone. It begins to see what others do not see. And with that comes the second inevitable effect, the confrontation with mediocrity. Because when you start to become strong, the collective mediocrity senses it, and it reacts. And that is precisely what we will discuss next, the danger of collective. Mediocrity, Because the world does not pursue those who are the same. It pursues those who dare to stand out. Nietzsche did not fear tyrants, authoritarian leaders, or declared oppressors. What he feared and denounced with philosophical fury was the subtle and corrosive power of collective mediocrity, that invisible system that keeps everyone leveled down, that punishes those who dare to think differently, that rewards obedience and disguises cowardice as virtue. True tyranny, according to nature, does not originate from above. It emanates from the sides, from a crowd that demands you remain small so that they do not have to grow. And that is precisely what happens when you begin to stand out, when your mind becomes sharper, your spirit firmer, your presence more unsettling. You begin to disturb, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something rare. You are breaking the mold, and society detests those who break molds. Collective mediocrity cannot tolerate individual brilliance, because that brilliance exposes the darkness of ordinary life. Nietzsche termed this slave morality, a morality constructed by those who, unable to achieve greatness, decided to invert values. They transformed strength into arrogance, ambition into selfishness, independence into coldness, and with that, they created a moral system that protects the weak and condemns the strong. But make no mistake, this is not out of compassion. It is out of resentment, because the weak do not desire to be saved. They desire the strong to be destroyed. That is why, when you begin to liberate yourself, they start to attack you, sometimes directly, sometimes subtly, with glances, silence, irony. But the message is clear: return to the group. You are making us feel small, and you are unintentionally, simply by being who you are. Nature understood that most people exist in a state of paralyzing conformity, an existence shaped by fear, guilt, and obedience, and anyone who questions this state is perceived as a threat. But do not be deceived. Mediocrity does not attack with force. It attacks with numbers, with consensus, with the weight of repetition. It will attempt to make you doubt yourself. It will make you believe you are wrong for not fitting in. It will utilize all social resources, from shame to exclusion, to make you lower your head. And it is at this juncture that many surrender, because they cannot bear to be the strange, the difficult, the arrogant. But nature would give you another name: necessary. Because while the world revolves around recycled ideas, manufactured desires, and comfortable truths, it is the strong individual who introduces the necessary discomfort for something new to be born. Your difference is the spark of transformation, but it is also the target of resistance. Being strong, thinking freely, living autonomously, all of this is an act of war against collective mediocrity. And like any war, it demands preparation, it demands weapons, but not physical weapons, mental weapons. And that is precisely what we will discuss now in the final part, because there is a very high cost to developing a mind so strong that it frightens, but there is also a reward that no one can take away. In the next part, you will understand the price and the power of being unbreakable. You made it this far. That already sets you apart from the majority. Most people would have closed this video at the first provocation. They would have fled at the first discomfort. They would have turned it off the moment they realized this is not content meant to stroke the ego. It's a call to action, a call for those who are ready to let go of the comfortable illusion and face reality with their eyes wide open. Because building a mind so strong that it becomes feared is not just a choice. It's a renunciation. You will lose friendships that were based on superficiality. You will lose opportunities that require submission. You will lose the ability to be content with little. But in exchange, you gain something priceless: integrity, clarity, presence. You will begin to notice that most people live in a slumber, and that your lucidity is frightening, that your firmness makes others tremble, that your absence is louder than the presence of many. This strength does not originate from outside. It is not taught in self-help books, nor is it earned with ready-made phrases or empty affirmations. It is dug deep within the soul, in the silence of difficult nights, in the choices that no one sees. It is the result of an internal war between who you were and who you are becoming, and this war has no end, because the truly strong are not those who have won. They are those who continue to fight even when they could already stop. Nature did not seek to create followers. It sought to provoke internal earthquakes. It wanted you to cease crawling for approval, to cease begging for meaning, to cease searching in prefabricated systems for what can only be built with blood, sweat, and awareness. It wanted you to become dangerous, not in a violent sense, but in a rare sense, so rare that your mere existence compels others to look in the mirror and confront what they are avoiding. And now I want to invite you to do something that will solidify this process. Write in the comments a truth you are tired of hiding, an opinion you are afraid to voice, a thought that makes you feel isolated but that represents who you truly are. This is part of the journey, claiming your voice, showing your presence, and more than that, declaring that you will no longer bend. And if this video touched you, if something inside you was awakened, don't stop here. The next video is just as important as this one, perhaps even more so. It continues this journey, and if you've made it this far, you know you're not watching just out of curiosity. You are here because something inside you has already begun to change. So keep going. You are not alone. You are just ahead, and that, my dear, is frightening, but it is also liberating.